NVIDIA RTX 3050 and 3050 Ti gaming laptops are here, but what are the actual differences in games, and is it worth paying more money for the Ti? I've compared both in 15 different games at all setting levels, as well as thermals, battery life, content creator workloads, and more to show you the differences. These are the differences in specs between these two GPUs. Both have 4 gigs of GDDR6 memory with the same speed, but the Ti has 25% more CUDA cores and 25% more RT cores. Both have the same power limit range of 35 to 80 watts, so performance will vary significantly based on this. But even with the same power limit, the Ti doesn't clock as high as the non-Ti, presumably because the Ti has more CUDA cores to power. I'm using the Core 17 from XMG to do all of this testing fairly. I've got the exact same Tongfeng chassis with the same specs, including CPU and memory, same cooling design, same battery, same everything. The only difference is that one has the 3050 while the other has the 3050 Ti. Both laptops are able to run the GPU up to 80 watts plus 15 watts with dynamic boost, so 95 watts best case on the GPU, but it will depend on the workload. Unfortunately, neither laptop lets us disable Optimus. However, that feature usually costs more money, and given the 3050 is probably going to be found in cheaper laptops, that kind of makes sense. That said, this should still be a fair comparison, as both of these laptops force Optimus. Otherwise, both laptops were tested with the same version of Windows and same NVIDIA drivers. So let's start out by comparing 15 different games, followed by things like thermals afterwards. If you get sick of me talking about games, then just use those timestamps below. Cyberpunk 2077 was tested with the exact same run through the game on both laptops. I've got the 3050 results shown by the red bars and the 3050 Ti results shown by the purple bars, along with all setting presets the game offers with lowest down the bottom and highest up the top. This game actually saw the biggest difference out of all 15 titles tested, with the Ti reaching 18% higher average FPS at ultra settings. Although both can run ray tracing, even with DLSS enabled, the results aren't too impressive in this game. But as you'll see soon, the Ti can offer bigger gains in ray tracing. It's not all big gains for the Ti though. Take Assassin's Creed Valhalla for instance. This game gets limited harshly by the 4GB VRAM, and as a result, ultra high and very high settings are bottlenecked in scoring the same unplayable results with either GPU. Even in the best case at low settings, the Ti is only around 5% faster than the non-Ti. Let's look at Watch Dogs Legion next, because it's a more average result compared to the previous two extremes. At max settings, the Ti was around 9% faster than the non-Ti, though this only equates to a less than 3 FPS difference. Not really something you're likely to notice, though the frame rate difference was more than double this with lower setting levels. Control was tested with and without ray tracing. Let's start with ray tracing off results. The Ti was just 7% higher in average FPS at max settings, though this is just 3 FPS. Either GPU was able to run the game at above 60 FPS with medium settings. Performance drops back significantly with ray tracing enabled. However, the Ti was now 38% higher in average FPS at max settings. Quite a big difference. So it seems like for ray tracing, the Ti has quite an advantage. But that said, these results aren't really playable, so it hardly matters. This is where DLSS comes in. It's required if you want to use ray tracing on either the 3050 or 3050 Ti in this game. The Ti still had a massive 22% higher average FPS at max settings here. Even the 1% lows from the Ti were ahead of the averages from the non-Ti. Red Dead Redemption 2 illustrated another example of where the 4 gigs of VRAM is a limit. Neither laptop GPU is able to run ultra settings because there's not enough. That said, high settings was about 7% faster with the Ti, which was only just below that 60 FPS sweet spot. The differences in Microsoft Flight Simulator were much higher than expected, as I generally consider this test to depend more on the processor. However, at max settings, the Ti was 15% ahead. Though again, like previously, this is just a 3 to 4 FPS difference, so nothing major when looking at the actual results compared to percentage values. Death Stranding only had minor differences for the 1% lows, while average FPS was 6% higher at max settings with the Ti, or about 5 FPS or so. Call of Duty Warzone on the other hand had one of the smallest differences at max settings. The Ti was just 5% faster in terms of average FPS. There was a larger 13% boost at minimum settings, but this game is harder to accurately compare as the results may be skewed by the actions of other players. The fun of testing battle royale style games, I guess. Fortnite, on the other hand, was tested using the same replay on both laptops, so directly comparable. The Ti was just 6% ahead of the non-Ti at max settings in this one, but considering the frame rates are so close together and still above 100 FPS from either GPU, I doubt this is a difference you'd be likely to notice when playing. Plus, you could always enable DLSS for a boost. Metro Exodus had a well above average 16% boost to average FPS at ultra settings, but we've got to be careful of these vanity numbers. Perhaps these frame rates aren't even what you'd want to play at, and that's exactly why I spent the extra extra time showing the lower settings too. Unlike the big differences we saw in Control with ray tracing, the ray tracing preset didn't see big differences with the TI. The Witcher 3 also saw above average gains for the TI, reaching 12% higher average FPS at max settings here, slightly under 10 FPS difference or so again perhaps not something you'd really notice in a side-by-side comparison, but at least it's more of a change compared to some of the other games. Shadow of the Tomb Raider was reaching 9% higher average FPS with the highest setting preset, but the 3050 non-TI was still easily surpassing 60 FPS in this test at max settings. Perhaps as it's an older title and we're dealing with modern hardware. While we're looking at older games, Battlefield 5 was reaching 7% higher average FPS with a TI at max settings. But again, like a lot of others, this is just a 3 to 4 FPS difference, though the gap widens at lower setting presets. Medium settings, for example, was 10% faster on the TI. Granted, 1% lows hardly differ. I figured I'd throw in a racing game because some people have been asking for that. F1 2020 was similar with an 8% boost to average FPS with the highest setting preset, though either GPU is still easily surpassing 100 FPS in this test even maxed out. Rainbow Six Siege was similar again, with a 7% boost to average FPS at max settings on the TI. But again, with such high frame rates, it's not like you're going to struggle playing with the cheaper non-TI. On average, over all 15 games tested at 1080p with the highest setting preset, the RTX 3050 Ti was almost 9% faster than the RTX 3050. As we can clearly see, results could vary significantly based on the particular game. Worst case, there was no change in Assassin's Creed Valhalla due to a VRAM bottleneck, while others like Cyberpunk in the best case had 18% gains. Though in many cases, once we actually consider the differences in FPS, it's often not much. Here's what the differences look like if we instead use the minimum setting preset rather than maximum. Generally, lower settings are less GPU bound, so the average difference is a little lower, but still close to an 8% boost on average with the TI. Given many of the resource-heavy games weren't necessarily running at playable levels at max settings, these results could be more practical. Now let's check out thermals and battery life. The interior of both laptops is the same 62 Wh battery, and the cooling solution is the same, and both have the same i7-11800H CPU with same power limits. Only the GPU is different. For these upcoming tests, I've capped both laptops to 80 watts on the GPU, so there's no dynamic boost in use here, which was the case previously. These are the clock speeds that were reported by Hardware Info by running the Heaven GPU benchmark at max settings at 1440p for 30 minutes. As per the specs shown at the start, the 3050 is able to clock higher. The temperature results were interesting. Both laptops were tested at the same time in the same workload, and the 3050 was slightly warmer. Now, it's only a small difference, but I was still going into this expecting the higher tier TI GPU to run warmer. It might be because the 3050 clocks higher, or maybe its fewer CUDA cores are in a smaller hotspot, but that's just speculation. Either way, the difference is small, and I wouldn't pick one or the other based on this. I've compared battery life in gaming, and the TI was actually lasting a few minutes longer, though it's an extremely small amount, and realistically, I'd say within margin of error. Again, I'd consider them the same here. I've also tested some content creator workloads to see if there's any difference compared to the games just covered. Adobe Premiere was tested with the Puget Systems benchmark, and no real difference here. The GPU hardly seems to matter. The score is more based on the processor, and both laptops have the same one. I'd expect DaVinci Resolve to show a larger difference on the TI, but unfortunately the Puget test kept failing due to the 4GB VRAM limit. Blender was tested with the OpenData benchmark using CUDA, and the longer classroom test was around 8% faster with the TI here. So quite similar to the average difference seen in the games, despite the TI having 25% more CUDA cores than the non-TI. The V-Ray test showed a slightly larger 10% gain with the TI, but again, given this is a CUDA test, I was expecting to see bigger differences owing to the 25% higher CUDA core count that the TI offers. Now for the price differences. XMG advised me that the 3050 Ti costs about 21% more money compared to the 3050, but that's in the context of a GPU alone, which you can't buy. When you go to buy a laptop, you buy the whole laptop with the GPU already included. If a 3050 laptop was about $800 in this example, then a 3050 Ti laptop would be about 6% more money. But that's just going on the raw cost of the GPUs. It's likely that the OEM would probably want to take some profit going to the higher model. It's worth noting that XMG offers the Core 17 with RTX 3060 graphics rather than the two 3050 configurations I've got here. They just provided me with these models so that I could make this comparison. You can check out the Core 17 with the links down in the description. So yeah, at the end of the day, the 3050 Ti isn't amazing or anything, and it's going to come down to the price difference. But if you're in a situation where the 3050 Ti is, say, 10% more money compared to the 3050, then it could be worth it. At least the price increase somewhat scales with the performance boost on offer. But yeah, again, it just comes down to the price difference of the specific laptop, as well as your performance target. As we saw in many of the games, often there wasn't too much of a difference. Results could also, of course, vary based on power limits. I've basically tested the best case 3050 and 3050 Ti here with maximum power limit. According to the NVIDIA spec, you can get either with as low as a 35 watt limit. So with a laptop that runs the GPU at 35 watts, I would expect significantly lower results compared to what I've shown here. So which of these two laptop GPUs would you pick in your next laptop, the 3050, or would you spend extra for the 3050 Ti? Let me know down in the comments, and get subscribed for future laptop comparisons like this one. Come and join me in Discord and get behind the scenes videos by supporting the channel on Patreon, and check out some of these videos when you're done. I'll see you in one of those next.